No, I'm not live yet, so I can still do casual racism. So what do you want me to say? I'll do anything. That word? Yeah, I'll say that word. Oh no. What's up, everyone? I think we are live. I always am not sure if we're live. I always have to wait for someone in the chat to confirm with me that we are in fact live. But it seems like we are. I'm seeing chat confirmation, so I know that it's real. I know that it's real, guys. Hopefully, everyone is doing okay today. I'm glad to see you folks in the chat. We have a very great guest today. I'm excited to talk to. I imagine that you are excited to, if not talk to, hear someone talk to on your behalf, as an intellectual midwife of sorts. That's what I like to think of myself as. Don't tell me I'm not live in the chat, because how would you tell me that? How would you know that I wasn't live? This is Michael Burns. This is I'm going to call this community college working title a stream where I'm just going to talk to people that are smart and interesting for a variety of reasons. Let you talk to them as well. Today's guest is Jared Henderson. Jared Henderson is a philosophy PhD, a very accomplished YouTube creator. And, as of an announcement that was publicly made yesterday, and about to be published author. Obviously, he's an author of a really good Substack, but a book. So I'm going to bring our guy on. Let's see. Can I do it? Hey there.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. I'm going to move some stuff around until I have you on the screen in a way that feels adequate.
Okay.
There we go. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. I am so happy to be not on Wisecrack, to be here with you.
Well, don't I legally I can't say anything.
Okay.
I'll say this: if anyone's looking for me to get a little spicy, stick around later, because if anyone's trying to get me in trouble, they'll just watch the beginning of the stream,
Oh, yeah.
and then they won't stick around towards the end. But yes, I will also say, because Jared brought it up, I no longer work at the place where I used to work officially, and now I'm here and I'm doing this, and I'm excited about it. So thank you so much for being here. Wait, Jared, I want to start with this: the book.
Yeah.
Can
What about?
you?
Yeah.
Well, this feels like a big deal. It was, that an announcement was made.
Mhm.
You are putting out a book. Can you quickly tell us a little bit about it so we can start looking forward to it and wet our intellectual whistle, so to speak?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I was able to make the announcement yesterday. I've known about it, known that there were. I've been working on it for a while, but with as you know, if you're working with a publisher
Yeah.
or like any big company, it's just takes forever before you can say anything publicly. I The book's called The Intellectual Life. That's the working title. For people who don't know, authors don't get to choose their titles. So
Mhm.
this is something that your publisher just decides for you. I don't mind that title. I like it, but it
It's pretty
happens
good.
to be it happens to be the name of a book that I really love from the 1920s, called The Intellectual Life, by this French Dominican friar who wrote this
Oh,
practical guide for living the intellectual life that I love, but it's super Catholic. And I recommend it to people all the time, and they're like, I love it, but it was really more Catholic than I was expecting. and, and, and so the easy pitch for this is it's a very similar kind of book, where it's about what is it to live the life of the mind, what is it to live a sort of engaged intellectual life, especially if you're not in academia. So it's
Mhm.
partly coming out of the fact that after I left academia, I finished my PhD, I had to figure out how to do all that stuff again
Yeah.
when I wasn't getting paid to teach classes or to, to be a student or to write. And so I wanted to kind of share some of that. So there's a lot of philosophy in there about what is the life of the mind. The first chapter, I'm talking a lot about Hannah Arendt, talking a little bit about Nietzsche, talking a lot about Plato. But there's also just practical stuff that I go into my channel about reading, about making time to read,
Mhm.
about writing. And I'm trying to sort of synthesize that philosophical and practical stuff, kind of like what I do on my channel.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, I'm curious about this, if you don't mind me asking, then, because I do think it's a thing. Obviously, as a fellow wayward academic, I totally get that, and it's such a weird experience to go from a world where your professional life is oriented around ideas and the exploration of ideas, and time to read is prioritized, and you're in communities where people want those sorts of things. But I also think a lot of folks in their day-to-day lives probably feel a disconnect sometimes between what it means to live like an active intellectual life versus a passive intellectual life. And by that, I mean, I think a lot of us might be consuming things that are smartish, whether it's, videos or podcasts or whatever. So I'm just curious if you have like a few thoughts, don't give away the book, everyone. And I imagine pre-orders aren't up or anything yet, right?
No. So the way it works in nonfiction, I sold the idea and I sold an outline, and I'm finishing the book now.
Okay, cool. So we have
And
time to save money.
It's not going to be out until like next year.
Okay,
Probably
cool.
like 2026. So you have enough time. Let's say it's a $30 hardback. That sounds about right. You guys could save $30 a month and buy 12 copies if you'd like.
I forgot. We're here with certified financial planner Jared Henderson, giving you guys advice. So there you go.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? What's like at least one tidbit or one thought you have on how folks can integrate intellectual practice into their day-to-day life?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm going to be exploring in a later chapter is the fact that I think that you were kind of right about this. I think a lot of people are kind of into consuming intellectual content. Like they'll watch a video essay, they'll read a book, but they stop writing basically anything after they leave college or after or if they don't have an audience. And so one of the things that I think that people should just be doing more of is actually trying to structure their thoughts in a way like on the page. And I'm going to be talking about a few different formats about that in the book. But I think one version of that is I had this exercise that I did in grad school from a mentor of mine. It was just every time we read a paper for a seminar, it was, could you in one page, and he had like very strict definitions of like what the formatting was and stuff. So it ended up being maybe 500 to 700 words, write a quick summary of what it was about, an objection, and a possible response to that objection. Do you know how hard that is? Like to do that? That's so difficult. But it was probably one of the most influential bits of advice I ever received, because it meant that I had to be able to get to the heart of the matter in a way. And that's one thing I think we all like really struggle with, is figuring out what the salient like core of an idea is, rather than stuff that just kind of happen like like stuff that's just kind of extraneous that might be interesting, but we kind of start going down these weird eddies and things. So part of the book is about so part of the advice is that try to identify that core idea and explore it on the page. And you should actually, even if no one's ever going to read it, you should be writing those thoughts down, because if you're not, if you're not writing them down, you're probably not systematizing them nearly as much as you could be, and you're going to feel the benefits too.
No, that's so real, because I do think there's something about like the externalization of consciousness in writing things down and reflecting on ideas that's so important, and like that creation of space to kind of see what we are thinking. And I know that again, thinking back to like grad school days, I feel like most times I ever had a good idea, it's when I was just reading something I didn't quite understand and then wrote out my misunderstandings or tried to sketch out like how I was thinking of the thing. And again, like I think something we don't see as much. Real quick, so my friend John in the chat is asking, what was the name of the book by the Dominican friar again? Oh, it's the same thing, right?
It's literally called The Intellectual Life, which is my working title. There's no guarantee that that's what it's going to be called. I pitched it with like 3 different titles. We'll just see. My contract says one thing, the announcement says another. They get to decide. But The Intellectual Life for now is what I'm calling it, and it happens to be Serti Onju's book as well.
Yeah. And then what do you think? And I have a few. We'll talk about some other stuff. I'm interested in this book stuff and related ideas right now. I mean, what would be your pitch as well, maybe to those who have doubts about the value of like prioritizing space for the intellect in their day-to-day lives? For those who are just like, everything sucks, I work a ton, I can barely do everything I'm supposed to do in life. Is that really a priority? Why does that matter? Obviously, I'm asking rhetorically because I think it is, but what do you think?
Let me say the two arguments for it. And one of them is like very Aristotelian, and then one is very much more modern. The Aristotelian version of it is like, we want to be like better versions of ourselves, in the sense that there are capacities that we want to develop. And a lot of those are our rational capacities that much of your life is not about developing. In fact, it's very easy for us to ignore those. And there is a lot of, I would say, economic incentive to ignore them as well. And sometimes we want to just passively consume because it's like a comfort for the fact that like we work terrible jobs that we hate. But this is a way of like you getting to kind of exercise a bit of yourself that the rest of like the sort of certainly the economic world is not going to encourage you to
Mhm.
exercise. But the second argument, it's kind of related, I guess, is that every bit of your life, right, is probably being measured by there's some metric that's being applied to it. Your boss is telling you how to like clock your hours. Your boss is telling you um, exactly what sort of benchmarks you need to hit every single week or month or whatever it is. This stuff that you do, you will never have to apply a metric to it
Mhm.
whatsoever. And I think this having this part of our life that's not measured, it's kind of crazy to think. You probably track the way that you sleep, or many of you do, or the calories that you eat, or
Yeah.
like the food on your plate, and you document every part of your life. And um, you're always wanting to be more economically successful, and you know the exact worth that you have as a human being because you can calculate your net worth. And this is a part of your life that can totally escape that.
Yeah. That's incredibly real. And I think like with with some of that too, it makes me think of like a thing I used to talk about when I would teach, and I would think about this relative to Aristotle, because there's the part where like the first time you read like Aristotle's Ethics, and you're getting to like what is the best way to live life, and you get to the life of contemplation, and you can see the look on a student's face that's sort of like, wait, so after all of this guy's telling me I need to like sit around and think all day,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's a sense in which that feels so unproductive
Mhm.
relative to how we're supposed to be thinking about stuff. Um, but I mean, like, I love the idea that thought and contemplation and sort of vaguely philosophical thought, broadly construed, is abstracting us from that drive for consumption and that drive that like everything we do has to have like a market value.
Mhm.
Because we live in this era where every hobby you have to think about like how can I monetize said hobby or whatever it is. Guys, I realize the irony of a couple people that do philosophy on YouTube talking about what I'm talking about right now, but I'm just going to note that. But I think like the way in which thought is valuable in itself, it's valuable in so much as you can abstract it from like economic measures, and just the way that it sort of like, because a thing I used to think about when people would ask like why I wanted to study philosophy, a thing I would often say is I like that you can do philosophy about anything, and I
Mhm.
feel like developing your intellect and sort of a philosophical way of thought is so great because it like applies to everything. You can think philosophically and think creatively, intellectually about film or relationships with your family or nature or whatever it might be, and I think that's I think it just can be something that makes life a lot better. Also
Yeah,
more
exactly.
difficult, but yeah.
Yes, also more difficult. That part's absolutely true. But it's literally like it is developing the faculty that you use to make sense of things.
Yeah.
And it turns out you're gonna have to make sense of a lot of things in your life. You're gonna have to deal with your relationships or like what those mean, but also your job, and you're gonna eventually have to wonder. I mean, you might be thinking about this at the end of that stream. Uh, like, did anything I do matter? Right?
Yeah.
Like those kinds of questions. Every single person is going to encounter that, and it turns out pondering the problem of universals does actually make you a little bit better about that
Yeah.
down the future in a way that you don't necessarily immediately see.
And I would definitely say like not there's something sad that can happen. It's almost like I guess I'll sound slightly Aristotelian again. There's like a decay of the soul that can happen when you neglect these things from your life. And you see what happens when folks do not engage with sort of critical and creative thinking about the world around them. And it does make life, maybe it makes it like passively easier in some sense, but definitely makes it less interesting, less fulfilling. And I think, a thing I talk about way too much is kind of the relationship between like thinking and empathy. And I do
Mhm.
think developing a robust intellectual life, whether that's through reading fiction carefully or watching films and thinking about them or doing philosophy, does connect you to humanity in a way that I think is really important.
It does, and I would also add, okay, life is hard and it's often painful.
Yeah.
People might be aware, and one of the things that Hannah Arendt talks about when she has she wrote this book called The Life of the Mind.
Yeah.
It's sort of the follow up to The Human Condition, but it's not finished. It's the last book she ever published, and she she says that there are essentially two sort of drives to the life of thought. One of them is the Greek drive, and one of them is the Roman drive. And the Greek drive is like based in wonder, right? So it's like in Theaetetus. Like Theaetetus is just so mesmerized by these mathematical facts that he wants to keep doing philosophy and he wants to solve the paradoxes. But she says the Roman answer, and I think the Roman answer is much more relatable today, is that contemplation is a way for you to retreat from suffering. So she points out that like Epictetus, like Stoicism became more popular in the Roman Empire than it ever was in Greece. And Epictetus is a slave who then turns into Stoic philosophy, partly there. Even in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, you kind of see this. Like he's often dealing with a lot of stuff, probably a little stressful to be an emperor. Boethius in the Consolations of Philosophy is about to be put to death. And how does he console himself? Lady Philosophy visits him and talks through what fate and fortune mean. And I think for a lot of us, having this place you can go when life is hard, and actually the realm of thought is one of those is one of those places, and it's actually kind of a balm for those who suffer.
Yeah. Damn, that's good, guys. Rewind that, clip that.
That'll be in the book. So
amazing. Remember, $30 a month. You buy 12 copies when it comes out. So, to transition a little bit, but related to this, obviously, folks know that I like Jared's channel a lot. I'm sure many of you do as well. And a thing that I like about your channel, and especially some of the recent videos, is like the feeling that there is a thematic operating through many of them that's not always overt or in your face. Like you're not saying my series about blank. But the thing I always end up thinking about, especially with some of your recent videos, is like the question of attention, how we give our attention, how attention is potentially grabbed from us, in some cases, like where can we put that attention? Maybe your list of 20 favorite philosophy books. But would that be fair of me to say that attention is a thing that you think about or have been thinking about in some of what you've been making?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have been sort of obsessed with the concept of attention, and the concept of focus for a couple of years, and just figuring out what we can do with it, because I have always just sort of felt like there's been this fracturing of my attention for so long. And the question was like, why can't I read as quickly as I used to, or something? That was a question that kind of initially got with you. So it was a very kind of practical question. But when you start thinking about attention, you realize, one, you're thinking about the value of thought, and you're thinking about this stuff, but you're also wondering about our built environment. We're also wondering about what our media look like, the technologies that we use. Once you have a kid, it turns out that attention becomes something you really have to pay attention to as well, because you have to make sure you're giving them enough attention, but also kids are horrible for your focus. It's like if you want to just read a book,
I can confirm this. Yes,
it's really hard having a kid, man. I've got my second kid on the way. I don't know if I've told you.
Oh my God, congrats.
Yeah. So we have a second kid coming, and I'm very excited. But also,
how far out, if you don't mind me asking?
It's in September, so we're just about in the second trimester.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Amazing. And congrats. I mean, this is, I'll ask you this in Q4 2025 or something. It's we are to get personal lifey here. We're contemplating the second one. And speaking of thinking about stuff, a lot to think about there.
Yeah.
So I understand how you're doing that. But yeah, so with the second kid on the way, thinking even more about how you're spending your time, what you're giving attention to, how you can get stuff done, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and not just to like get stuff done for the sake of like feeling like it is, but there are just certain activities that you value, right? Like I like to read novels. I like the way it feels. I like the way what it does to my mind. It's like my favorite pastime. But the thing about reading novels is like it's a little bit harder to simply just read one for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I kind of need like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And the problem is though, like if my son's obsessed with bubbles, like he loves bubble wands and stuff.
I mean, they're great.
And they are great, right? But he'll go do that, and then he'll do it for himself for a bit. It's so much easier. I could just pull out my phone for 5 minutes if I didn't want to play with bubbles for another hour.
Yeah.
But I can't really pick up Moby Dick.
Yeah. No, I
And
had an
so
experience like this recently. I'd been trying to read, so I'd never read the Corrections by Jonathan Franzen before,
mhm,
and was like, that seems fun. I want to read something fun yet serious about America. And I'd been reading it like 15 pages at a time for weeks and weeks and weeks and getting nowhere. And recently, my wife and I took our first 3-day vacation without our child since
mm,
she was born, and I just read like 500 pages in 3 days, and
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
reminded of that feeling of when you can kind of dedicate an afternoon to reading and totally enter that world, how different it feels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so like you're saying, it's hard to then kind of like square the circle between getting to
E
dedicate a day to reading and having like 15 minutes here and there.
exactly, and also, like, the hard part about having kids there is because you also know that giving them your attention matters. Like, you're
Yeah.
actually doing
Yes.
something really worthwhile. So what you realize is that you live in a world of competing goods.
Hmm.
So that you live in a world where sometimes you have to give up something good in order to do something that's also good. Um, that
That's
and
tough.
but you miss out like that particular kind of feeling of, man, did you do comps in your PhD?
I
Like,
did
or
not
anything
know.
like that? Okay, yeah, mine didn't really have comps as well, but we had this thing called the MA exam that we
Hmm.
called it, and it was just this period where you had to submit 3 papers, like, they had to be on certain subjects, and,
Hmm.
like, they had to be really good, basically, was the style, and I there was, like, a period of a couple of weeks where I had kind of gotten everything ready, but I just spent the few weeks just waking up, and the first thing I did was work on those papers, and I would read, and I would work on it, and it was basically all I did for a few weeks because I had
Hmm.
to pass these exams, and that's hard, probably not the best way to spend your entire life. However, it was also incredibly intellectually enriching to learn how to sustain a sort of a project for that long as
Yeah.
well, and to see where your ideas can go.
Yeah. And I just want to note you're getting a lot of congratulations for
Oh,
the
thank you.
forthcoming child in the chat. Yeah. Well, and then I think like it's this thing too of like in one's personal life, as you are describing, there's the struggle for attention. I think a lot of us, and guys, I don't want to tell people about their lives, but we have access to YouTube analytics. We know the general age and demographic of people who watch this stuff, and I know a lot of you guys are likely in a similar bubble and stage of life to Jerry and myself, maybe a little bit younger. And in our personal lives, as we work more, as we get into relationships, as we start families, our time gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And then, of course, externally, more than ever, there's so many things competing for our time and attention, whether that's the stuff that doesn't feel as bad, like media that we like and things we like
Mhm.
to watch and listen to. And then, of course, it's a social media and news cycle that every 3 seconds is telling us that the biggest, most important, worst thing in the world has happened.
Yeah.
And then that sort of incentivizes not only our consumption of that stuff, but our sort of repurposing and sort of discussion of those sorts of things. So, how do you think about that side of things in relation to the more, I guess, personal side of the struggle for attention?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a couple of things here. One, I wanna point out something that I think because I often talk about how, like, you should stop scrolling so you can read books.
Yes.
People are like, "But what about the fact that, like, I like watching TV or something?" Like, my like,
Yeah.
and that's fine. I actually think it's probably good to have some of that in your life where it's just, like, fun. In fact, this is my hottest take I have about the subject, I
Uh-oh.
suppose. Well, it's not that hot, I guess. My wife and I watched Severance, and we enjoyed it, but it was
Mhm.
kinda like actually, Severance is not as smart of a show as it, like, wants to seem like it is. So the
Yeah.
trick to enjoying Severance is to stop thinking about it after it's off. Like, don't think about Severance for too long, or else it'll just be okay. And that's fine. You should have some stuff in your life where it's like, it's just fun. Don't think about it too hard.
Yeah, Severance is such a good example for that because I people got mad at me when I said I didn't like the most recent season, and it's not that I enjoyed watching it, but the first season, I mean, the first season in a sense was like, what if we made a TV show that video essayist will have wet dreams about and be so excited to talk about because it touches on all these issues of like alienation and labor and yada yada, and I think it led to taking that lens to the second season. And I sort of halfway through arrived at where you and your wife arrived at. Like, I can enjoy this, but I don't have to intellectualize it. And I do wonder if that's a thing where, I mean, I was thinking about that this weekend. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who's here, but I'm curious, Jared, have you seen the movie Sinners?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
Very fun, very interesting movie. Does touch on some ideas, but it felt like there was this desire to almost over intellectualize it in
Yeah.
a way that seemed like, I'm going to phrase this sloppily, but that a weird thing happens where it's like our intellectual efforts are pulled towards maybe analyzing and thinking about things that, as you point out, are best just things to enjoy, maybe chat about with our friends over beers, but not to be the main content of our intellectual speculation. And in
Yeah.
doing so, it can take time and focus away from potentially thinking about other stuff. I mean, to think, and I know this isn't a scientific thing I'm about to say, but it's like, if you have so much time in a day to use your intellectual energy, do you want to use it thinking about a vampire movie, or do you want to use it reading an article or a part of a book, or having a discussion with a friend about something?
Yeah, you should and also it not only does it take away your time from like the deeper thinking stuff, it also just I have a feeling I haven't seen Sinners, right? But Sinners might be more fun if you just watch it and think like that was really good.
Yeah.
Like it might be enough. And we live in the world of like the video essay
Mhm.
where it's like I can't enjoy this until I've watched someone talk about it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it's like now I'm going to give you the history of the vampire and how the vampire has been a representative of the outcast and whatever it is. No, you could just enjoy the vampire movie. And
Mhm.
maybe there are some deeper themes too, which will actually make it easier to like you will appreciate it more. It could bear some scrutiny, but it doesn't have to be the thing you spend 12 hours thinking about or whatever.
Yeah. And I feel
That
that impulse sometimes, like when I, really embarrassing confession here, friends. I did watch the entirety of the new season of Daredevil on Disney Plus. The show is not sponsored by Disney Plus in any way, shape, or form. But then I like get in bed to like listen to a podcast to fall asleep and think like, gotta listen to a reaction podcast about an
yeah,
episode of television, that there's not enough there to necessitate a podcast that's longer than the episode of television itself. Um, but I wonder if you have ever thought this way about stuff. But I've had experiences where, for example, when I finished reading the corrections on vacation, and a few nights ago I wanted to watch TV, but I just played guitar instead for a
mhm,
while. And in both instances, I felt more satisfied and content than I would have if I would have passively consumed television or something. And a couple times I've like written a note to myself, kind of for my future self, to say like, I get that watching XYZ show seems great, but just remember like how it feels to read for 90 minutes. Remember how it
yeah.
feels to like play music for an hour. There's a sort of satisfaction there that we can miss out on. But I wonder if you ever, I don't know, think about that, or if sort of had those internal
Yeah,
conversations.
dude. I in the original, the story of this book is really weird because it originally started out as a book about work,
Hmm.
and then it kind of just shifted more and more as I kind of developed the idea. And I was going to have an entire chapter about the difference between consumption and creation,
Hmm.
and how creation is like this kind of fundamental human activity that we should really make more time for, and that actually in our kind of consumeristic world, in a world where there's a big incentive to make you into a constant customer,
Hmm.
you lose out on the ability to actually just make things yourself. And I don't mean like cook a meal from scratch, though that could be that it's like a fine way to do it. But most people's experience of music now is has to do with actually listening to music that's like being streamed to them or something that they've
Hmm.
purchased, um, rather than, for instance, creating music together. Like fewer people do that, where for a very long time music was a thing that was done that we could do
Yeah.
together rather than a thing that we could go and consume. And I don't think there's nothing actually wrong with the consumption of music too. However, it seems to me that we do miss out on something really important when we
Hmm.
lose that more active side, where it's not something that's that's not something like just given to you, but actually something that you get to play an active role in. And it's a way of sort of also bringing people together. I mean, you're playing guitar by yourself in that case, but you also play guitar with other people. You
I
can make
do.
music together, and that is an incredible experience
Yeah.
that we can too easily lose out on.
Yeah, I do need to let everyone know that there's some sort of Hollywood shoot happening outside my window right now, where a bunch of police, uh, motorcycles just came by and I thought something bad happened. And then I saw 2 cars with screens on the front and filming stuff behind them. It was very weird, but I got, the joys of living in an overpriced city.
Yeah.
It's either that or once a week I see Jack Black walk by. Those are my 2 claims to fame. No, but I definitely think that's true. And I know that a thing I've talked about before on various streams here and in other places where I will never be again. Post COVID, like I started playing music with people again, and I hadn't for years, and, really doing creative things with people, even if it is just for fun. There's like a satisfaction with that. That's so great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a book. Do you know Jeff Tweedy?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah.
I like Wilco a good bit.
Okay. Demographically, you seem like you would. I had to tell my brother-in-law who just turned 30, let me know that he bought tickets for his first Wilco show. And I was like, well, yeah, that is your birthright as a white guy that went to liberal arts college in his 30s.
And you're gonna find that you appreciate Wilco a lot more the moment you become a dad. It's like I don't know, like the first time I became a dad, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna listen to Bob Dylan a lot more, and I'm gonna listen to Wilco in between Bob Dylan records.
Yeah, there needs to be like a new dad soundtrack. But Jeff Tweedy, the singer of this band Wilco, friends, listen to him if you want, wrote a book called How to Write One Song. And the premise of the book, which I like a lot, is it's like a call to incorporate a sense of creativity into your daily life, but not to turn you into the next Grammy-winning songwriter, just to make that a thing that you do. And he outlines like his own creative practices. But a lot of the lessons in the book, whether you want to write a song or write poems or do paintings or whatever, it just like outlines a really cool practice in terms of integrating creativity into your life that I think is like a nice accompaniment to what you're talking about in terms of, and obviously these two overlap, like an intellectual practice in one's life. And I think there's a way in which like it can be okay to read a book even if there's no other purpose than you're just reading the book because it's good. I think there can be a purpose in writing poetry or fiction or painting, even if you never plan to show those things to another human being. Now, if you can do them in community, all the better.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we forget that. But go ahead.
I used to have this like thought. Like I had a buddy of mine in grad school who always played basketball, like 2 times a week or something. He like went to the gym and played basketball. And I had this thought. I was like, why would you play basketball if you couldn't be in the NBA? That was like my thought. And then at some point I realized like this is a very, very stupid way to think. But for some reason, it was like my natural reaction. Why would you play music if you couldn't be in a band that actually sold records?
Yeah.
Why would you? And I think I don't know where I got that idea from, but it was just a thought that was in the back of my head. Like, why would you do this? And then it happened to me where it was like, why would you continue to do philosophy if you weren't a professor?
Yeah.
And that's where it became real. And I had to realize like, no, that's mine too. Like those activities are kind of human activities that I have just as much of a right to, even if they're not part of, how I make my living.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to kind of pivot, but I think related. Makes me think about like because, I consume a good amount of things on YouTube. I watch a lot of what you could broadly call philosophy YouTube stuff or theory YouTube things. And I always think like the difference for me of the stuff I like and the stuff I don't like, or to be kind of crass with my distinctions here, are like, what are the things that give a person a tool to think about something creatively for themselves? What are the people who make videos or content that invite people to be active? And what are the things that present all the answers such that it feels like, open up a sort of cubby in your brain, I'm going to dump some stuff in it and leave. And that does make me think about one of my favorite dead Danes of all time, Soren Kierkegaard, who in, his critique of both the philosophy and media of his day, to be slightly reductive here, draws this distinction between things that just lead to reflection and things that lead to action and thought. What are the types of media, and in his day, he talks about journalism, that lead us to just like, I read the Copenhagen Gossip Mag, I'm going to share the gossip I heard with my friends. And what are the types of, intellectual or creative pursuits we can have that lead us to want to do things for ourselves or like live more active lives. It's like another part of, for me, at least, when thinking about how we consume, how we create, how we integrate sort of intellectual practices into our life, like what are the ones that can fall into the I'm thinking about stuff just to think about the stuff everyone is thinking about, or I'm consuming the right way, and what are the things that can make us think about our own humanity and live differently. Not to be too grandiose here, but it is a thing I think about. I know. Have you ever read Kierkegaard's Two Ages?
No, the only thing from Kierkegaard that I've really read like closely
Yeah.
is the concept of anxiety.
Whew, hell of a one. Yeah, because you went to like a serious, grad program where you're doing like logic and stuff like that. So they probably all the Kierkegaard books were buried in the back.
Yeah.
But no, I think like Two Ages is this book he wrote. Oh my God, there's more cops. Sorry, it's just very distracting when you see a bunch of police motorcycles drive by. But it's a book he wrote as part of like a literary review, and he outlines like these two ages. He's thinking about like mid 19th century Europe, the age of passion and the age of reflection, the age of passion, or the age of revolution, and kind of outlines an era where ideas like mattered. Ideas made you want to live differently. Ideas motivated you, and not just politically, but in terms of how you think about your relationship to religion, to your loved ones, to your art, all these sorts of things. And in this age of reflection, which he associates with like a bad type of Hegelianism, where everything's like mediated via the media, and everything's about like thinking the right stuff or agreeing with the right ideas in a way that doesn't really have any like existential stake in our lives.
Yeah.
It's actually one of my favorite things he wrote, because it's not pseudonymous. It's just like him writing a thing, and it's a relatively clear expression of his ideas in like 70 pages.
Yeah, okay, I should read that then. I did like the parts in the concept of anxiety, and I'm drawn to way more philosophers who are like this now, where it did seem like he wanted you to just sort of take ownership of these things in your life. So much of it when he's like critique of theology is that someone could be able like to perfectly say like all of the right dogma, but wouldn't like feel it in their bones, and it wouldn't change actually how they confronted the world. And I think that's that's like sort of the appeal about Kierkegaard. And I think you can do that with ideas too. It's not like just because you're engaging with ideas, you're automatically doing that. Especially if it's sort of mediated for you.
Well, and even thinking about, what you said about what does it mean to be a philosopher, not an academic, and I think it's fun about Kierkegaard was never an academic, always existed outside of that world. And I think, I think there's one sense in which I can sometimes still feel a little bit of maybe like inferiority when I interact with friends who like stayed in academia and are still very much in that world. But I do think there's an advantage, and this is not just for people who like went to grad school and then didn't stay in academia, but for any of us who are not academics, that like there is a value in existing in the real world that I think is really important. And it gives you like the resources and the material to think about a lot of stuff that folks who are in academia might not have. And it's, there's some value there.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that inferiority too. Look, I am like by the standards. I mean, okay, so academics are one of the few existing sort of guilds in the world, right? So you and I both went through a period where you find a mentor, you find someone who like guides you, who's like an established master, right? Who works you through basically your project and initiates you into it, right? In some countries still, they like still give you like a sword and stuff. I think it's like in Finland or something.
So cool.
And you have like proven that you can enter the guild, but then the next step is to then go get a job and go get tenure to prove that you should stay there forever. And all right, cool, man. I flopped out hard at that stage because I looked at the market and thought there's no chance, and I left. And you get the sense of like, okay, I got my first level of initiation or whatever, but I didn't make it, right?
Yeah.
And that is that's really natural, like to feel that inferiority. It's very easy, but you do realize like when I started doing philosophy sort of in public and with people, I found that the questions that were motivating people and would ask me were much more similar to the questions that got me interested in philosophy in the first place, that at some point I had been trained not to care about.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that the purely academic stuff is worthless. I don't think that. But what I did realize was that at some point, a lot of professional intellectuals, like in the academy, they kind of stopped caring about the stuff that probably motivated them in the first place, and that motivates other people to learn about philosophy. Nietzsche is not taken super seriously in academic philosophy. Not as Nietzsche is probably the most famous philosopher on the internet. Now, just because he's more famous on the internet doesn't mean that he's therefore worthwhile. But we should ask ourselves a question of why do so many people read Nietzsche and see something there?
Yeah.
What is it about like that writing that is so inspiring that we just somehow pretend doesn't happen or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think like Nietzsche is someone I think about in that context. You know, a lot of people I'll encounter who maybe got more into philosophy from stuff they saw on the internet will be really into like the existentialist, some of whom, you know, go in and out of fashion in academia. And yeah, it comes back to that question. Like these people are writing in such a way that it makes people think about their lives, that it connects with them on a deep level. And that's not to say that texts that don't do that are any less valuable, but like it's important. And especially I know enough to know from watching your videos that you're an Aristotle guy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I'm an
Yeah.
Aristotle guy. Yeah.
And you know, the thing whenever I like I tend to sometimes veer away from reading the Greeks for quite some time and I'll come back and I always am just reminded like so much of this is about how we live our lives in the day to day, how we think about our existence in the day to day, how we self interrogate in a way that's so relatable that sometimes when I think about elements of more contemporary philosophy, it feels so far from that, and makes me get sometimes why people, I guess, are less enthused or don't find that like interest. And, you know, I think to make it slightly political or whatever here, a thing I've been thinking about recently too is, you know, like we've seen a slow boiling attack on the humanities in the United States and you know in Western Europe. And recently, someone reached out to me from Canada, and at their university they'd shut down a bunch of the humanities departments. But yeah, like there's an importance to the type of thinking we are talking about for our personal lives, for our social lives, for our political lives, and it is scary when the fields that are meant to encourage that type of thinking are dwindling and being attacked. It feels bad.
No, no, it absolutely does feel bad. I mean, one, I'm shocked that I'm coming on this channel and it got political. Who would have thought?
I
But,
know. Everyone knows about me. I've never voted. I know nothing about politics.
yeah,
I sit in a little bubble and consume Disney Plus content all
yeah.
day. But I'm being bold right now.
But you know, the reason that we call them the liberal arts isn't because they are for like people who vote for the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
right? Right? Like they're called the liberal arts because they're supposed to set you free,
Hmm.
and they were contrasted with the servile arts.
Hmm.
But now there's some like weird class stuff in that distinction because the servile arts were like working with your hands, but the point was that the liberal arts were supposed to sort of speak to you as a human being, and the fact that they've been attacked by everyone, you know, like I mean, there's basically no one in American politics who I think is like a full-throated defender of the humanities, because they want to say no, we gotta like Democrats were the ones, you know, telling people that they needed to learn how to code,
Yeah.
um, and, um, and then you know every Republican administration wants to cut funding for universities and stuff like this, and obviously this has kind of reached a boiling point recently about like funding for schools. Most states have not recovered pre 2008 levels of funding for
Mhm.
universities.
Jesus.
Um, and one of the things that happens is like you just cut a ton um, of the humanities first. Though, you know, I did a video about this about universities sort of being
Hmm.
run like businesses. And one of the things that I thought was insane, I just couldn't believe it's reached this point, right? One of the minor University of North Carolina campuses, something like Wilmington or something like that. So not Chapel Hill, basically. They were shutting down a bunch of departments, and some of the departments they were shutting down obviously were um, going to be like philosophy or English or something like this. But they also shut down physics and Chinese and Russian as minor programs, like in
Nuts.
language programs. And it seems to me like, okay, what the physics one tells you is that they've decided that the theoretical sciences
Mhm.
that aren't immediately practical are
Hmm.
now actually no longer worth supporting either, which is nuts if you think about the relationship between theory and practice, anyways, in the
Hmm.
sciences. But also, there's just the stuff that you have to, it's expensive, but you have to let those ideas be explored. Well, apparently not anymore. And then who would have thought that maybe nowadays you might need some people who can speak Mandarin and Russian? You know, like
Anything going on over there? I don't know.
like
What are we talking about?
who would have thought? You know, we used to, man, the CIA used to think it would be a good idea to fund creative writing programs. The Iowa Writers Workshop was funded by the CIA for a long time. I don't know
Oh,
if
I
you know
didn't
that.
know that. I did
Yeah,
not
yeah,
know that.
yeah. Part of
Wow.
their thought was, now how much did they exercise control over content? I have no idea. But part of that was the thought that to beat the Soviets, we just had to have a huge like American culture. We were just going to overwhelm them with cultural
Yeah.
production. Um, no one thinks in those terms anymore.
No.
No, like at all. And now we've decided, and we don't even need to worry about physics.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
and you know, it wasn't that long ago, even here in ye old Uncle Sam's America, that there was just like a tacit agreement that, yeah, like education is good, that
Yeah,
universities
yeah.
are a public good. You know, even the way now that obviously this isn't a new thing, everyone knows that libraries have been and are still under attack. Just like
Yeah.
all of these places and institutions that encourage thinking, which then, you know, I think does add a political air to your project, in that it seems like in trying to encourage and outline what it means to have a life of the mind or pursue an intellectual life on your own. It's a way to like do that without those institutions. Obviously, it would be great if we lived in a society where anyone watching this who was like, I want to know more about Nietzsche, could go to like a city college and for
Mhm.
free or a very reasonable fee take a course on Nietzsche. We know that's not the case. But giving people the tools to figure out how to do that on their own, like, has a social and political value right now.
Yeah, you know, what is it? I can't remember which one, and I don't want to say it and butcher it.
Uh-huh.
One of the major universities in Paris is sort of distinctive because all lectures are open to the public, and
Yeah. I think I know the one you're
it's where
thinking.
Bergson used to teach.
Yeah. Well, because there's so many instances where, like, whether it's like obviously Bergson in like the 60s and 70s, like Deleuze and Guattari and Alain Badiou, like there would be these like hordes of leather jacket clad Parisian intellectuals smoking cigarettes and like listening to lectures and stuff. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a history of that.
it was just there. The idea being that people could just go. Anyone who was intellectually curious could just go and, you know, enjoy this stuff. But now, God, you know, there's something I wanted to bring up with you. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see that? Ryan Holiday, the most inoffensive stoicism guy in the world,
Mhm.
um, got a talk at the Naval Academy canceled because he was going to be too controversial.
Okay, yeah, I want to hear more about this, because when I saw that, I was shocked, because if anything, to me, he seems like the exact sort of guy that would be invited to something like that,
Yeah.
because he's, like you said, very inoffensive and very, like, you know, pretty if not like pro, like, I've never heard him say or write anything that seems against vaguely American values, or things that people seem to care about. So
Yeah.
what's the story there? What was
So I'll say this. I know Ryan personally because he's here in Austin as well,
Oh,
and
wow.
so he and I have met before, but I haven't heard this from him personally. I haven't
Yeah.
talked to him about this. I only read the public stuff. Basically, because of some executive orders in the Trump
Mhm.
administration, a lot of books were removed from libraries at various military academies.
Yeah.
Some of those were like obvious, like it was like, you know, I'm sure every copy of White Fragility they had was gone or
Mhm.
something like that. But also it was like Maya Angelou. Like I know why the caged
Yeah.
birds thing was removed. Now, um, Ryan has been invited to the Naval Academy multiple times to give talks. And he was basically going to talk about wisdom. That was going to be like
Mhm.
the concept. And one of the things he was trying to say was that part of wisdom is being able to read ideas that you disagree with. And he was going to tell the story of how James Stockdale, who was a vice admiral, who was a prisoner of war and all this stuff, who was a Naval Academy graduate, was actually funded by the U.S. Navy to get a master's degree from Stanford that involved an entire semester of only reading Marxist theory.
Mhm.
And the idea was like you had to actually know what these people were teaching if you wanted to defeat them. That was
Yeah.
that was the whole point, right? And they told him that because he was talking about this stuff, it could be read as critical of the administration.
Yeah.
And the Naval Academy, like, I guess technically is not allowed to be critical of the administration because like they have to answer to executive orders and stuff like this. So they pulled at like he was on campus or something like that, and they pulled his stuff because he refused to censor it.
Whoa.
So you can, and here's the thing, you can watch his entire, he put the 45-minute talk that he would have given up on his YouTube channel. And it's very Ryan Holiday. It's just
Yeah.
very like, here's some stoicism stuff. Here's some Epictetus. Like it's not, it's in no way grossly offensive or in
Yeah.
grossly controversial. And it's like, of all the philosophers that I thought would get canceled by the administration or had a chance, you know, it was they came for Ryan Holiday.
God, man, everyone else is screwed if Ryan Holiday's in trouble. I mean, the thing that makes me think of like, you know, I obviously get very annoyed when sort of contemporary public quote unquote intellectuals, you know, misquote or misrepresent big figures. You know, for example, I'll say like Marxism and postmodernism, like Jordan Peterson's two favorite things. It's like the thing that makes me mad isn't that Jordan Peterson is like Marx is bad or Derrida or Foucault is bad, whatever. What makes me mad is that he doesn't actually engage with the ideas or the text. And most of the people making these criticisms, like James Lindsay and others like that, like I often think this, and I say this to people, and I'm not like being hyperbolic, as someone that at one point taught like a year-long Marx course. Some of the stuff I've heard like Jordan Peterson say in these public forums, if a sophomore in college were to write that, I would give them a C or a D and say, hey, you got to do the reading, chief. This isn't it. And it's shocking that like you have the twin poles of people doing that sort of thing who at the same time are advocating for those very texts to be banned or made impossible to access. So then we rely on people that don't read them anyways, telling us what the books that we're not allowed to read say.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just shows a kind of like a sort of incuriosity that I find almost sickening. Like I just, if you hate it so much, you should want to know what's in it. You should want to know a little bit that's in there. But then also just like, oh, don't bother reading it. In fact, you shouldn't be allowed to read it. But I'll tell you what's in it, right? I'll tell you what it is. Like, take my word for it.
Yeah, that's not what you want.
No, it's just no good at all, man. And this is part of why I've been working on a Nietzsche video for a long time. One day I'll finally get it. Man, last time we streamed, I was like, I'm working on this. Maybe it'll be out next month.
That was a tough one.
Who knows? But the idea is like, here's the best I can do to tell you the sort of minimal interpretation of Nietzsche that I think is fairly reliable, right? Mm-hmm. And I think like a Marx one would be great. It would take me so long, so I don't think I would ever do it. But sort of a 90-minute kind of thing, so that someone who just needed to know a little bit could be like, here it is. But one of the things I always like to do in a video like that too is I always like to give people feel like there's a next step they could take after they've watched something from me that does not involve clicking on another video that I made.
Yes.
So like there's a next step, like reading all of the sources. Like I actually try to put my sources down there so you could check them out for yourself. Or here are the books by Nietzsche. I would say if you wanted to kind of get a basic grasp on him, you should read these 3 books and maybe this one secondary text.
Well, and I know that's something, Jared, people appreciate about your channel, that like there's always links to read stuff. And then often you end up pushing like your Substack or something, or a place where people can go like read and not just consume more stuff. Maybe I'll call this. I do want to make, I've spent the last, I've obviously been, God, I don't want to say too much. I've been prepping to not have the job that I had for a bit because one can see the writing on the wall for things like this. And in doing so, I have a bunch of Google Docs sketching out potential ideas for things I want to work on. And yeah, one of the things I have thought about is like a Marx video that is like the version of Marx that I wish people could have access to, that isn't, here's why you should start the revolution today, but is like, here's what the guy wrote about and thought about and cared about. Here's like some of the main ideas. Here's where and why people get it wrong. Here's some stuff you could read. So, if you're not going to do it, maybe I will.
Yeah, there's no chance I will do a Marx one, just because of the ones I could do that I think I could do well. It's so far down the list Like
Mhm.
it would take me so long.
Yeah, I mean, it
I'd
is a pain in
I'd
the ass.
actually have to read Capital, you know, or at least I'd have to read the other 2 volumes that nobody reads. So,
Oh god. I remember the year when I was in grad school when all at once everyone was like, "No, volume 3 is where it's all at. If you haven't read Capital Volume 3," and I just like was on like a train one day just like where I got to find the magic in here because everyone says it's there. But no, I think stuff like that's important, and I think you know, there's the tendency to like boil things down to tiny ideas. So I'm excited to see your Nietzsche video. Let me, I'll wind down soon. You got a lot going on, and I really appreciate you spending some time hanging. Um, your second most recent video, your scrolling one, and I will say your most recent video, friend, for anyone who's watching, best philosophy in history, really cool list of 20 greatest philosophy books. Some of them, I would say, friends, if you're not super trained in philosophy, are accessible. I think you do a good job of saying when and where. Also, I like that you acknowledge the problem with putting the Communist Manifesto on philosophy books list.
it's just not a work of philosophy. This is one of
Yeah,
these things where like I'm not a Marxist, right? So
yeah,
I'm not like, but like you have to be able to, one, objectively talk about Marx's impact on philosophy.
yeah.
Cool. But two, if
That's
you're
not
trying
it.
to do that, it's not the Communist Manifesto.
No.
It is not like it's not a work of philosophy.
Yeah.
It
Oh, and
is
because
it's a
if you're
it's political messaging.
yeah, I mean, if you're interested and again too, I think that's the thing when if I make this video, I'm gonna be like, this is the video on Marx's philosophy. A lot of other stuff. You can read that. But if you're considering Marx philosophically, you're just talking about someone who's in this like post-Hegelian milieu, who's building on a set of ideas that come out of German idealism, mixing them with some political stuff. A lot of good stuff there. But I won't rant on that now. But I was gonna say, everyone check out that video. But your second most recent video, the scrolling one. I mean, that's one of those ones where like even like your thumbnails are kind of triggering because we can all see ourselves in. I don't know if the one is
Yeah.
still up where it's you with the phone.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
think that's the one up. Yeah.
I think when it went up, I got that the first time I looked at it, and the second time I got one of the other thumbs that you were testing. And I was like, I know I need that one again. So hopefully that one won.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's one of those questions or issues that I think all of us are constantly thinking about because we're all constantly doing. And I'm sure many people watch this video as well. Share a little bit some thoughts on the scroll and the relationship between attention and the scroll.
Oh yeah, yeah. So one is basically we have almost entirely uncritically accepted that these things should just be carried with us at all times.
Hmm.
And I think we just don't do a lot of like careful thinking about this. There are like popular sort of memes out there in the culture about like what the phones are doing to us and stuff, but I don't think people are really thinking about it more in a sort of a surface level. One
Hmm.
of the things that I think that is most dangerous about them and about the scrolling stuff though is just the fact that the algorithmic content that we consume um, is sort of optimized, you might say. The algorithms are
Hmm.
optimized to keep you angry because anger is a really,
Hmm.
really good way of keeping you engaged. And some people want to push back a little bit when I point this out because I kind of take a line that it's like it's basically pointless to get angry about the stuff that's on your phone. And they want to say,
Hmm.
no, but I have like a righteous anger about this because it's like real injustice in the world.
Hmm.
Yeah, but think about like it's a very impotent rage because most of the time the stuff you get mad about on your phone does not like lead to you like going out to the streets. Maybe there's like
Hmm.
a few cases people actually got out, and decided to march for Palestine or something. But like they most of the time you just get really angry and then you keep like you just keep going to go get angry about something else, right?
Yeah.
Um and anger clouds your judgment and clouds your ability to see clearly in a really powerful way, actually. Okay. The monastic writer John Cassian
Oh
has
wow.
this great metaphor,
Okay.
right? Where he describes that he points out that anger is dangerous, he says, because sometimes it's justified. So it's very easy to fool yourself into thinking that it's good to be
Hmm.
angry. But the metaphor he uses is like imagine like a leaf, some like kind of sheet of something that's clouding, put in front of your eyes. He says it doesn't matter if it's made of gold, so it's valuable, or it's made of lead because it still blocks the sun. Like it still blocks the light and you can't see anything. And I think that the anger is basically like that.
Damn,
Even if it's for
that's
a
really
good
good.
cause, most of the time when you're getting angry online, you're just unable to see clearly and you're mostly just going to keep scrolling to continue to be angry. At that point, guys, stop scrolling and go read something that doesn't matter. Like,
Mhm.
like don't even just say like I'm gonna stop scrolling so I can read Aristotle. Dude, I read so many science fiction novels.
Yeah.
Just go read a science fiction novel because it will at least be more fun.
Yeah.
It will be more fun.
I mean, to once again reference the 72-hour vacation I got to take recently, I made a very conscious effort to just leave my phone in the room. In most of the time we were there, and in fairness, my wife had hers to make sure our child was alive. But as a father, I just abdicated all responsibility. But yeah, like it's a cliche thing to say, but you get away from the scroll for a bit, and your brain feels better.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, it's interesting too. I wonder how you think about this. I mean, obviously, you and your work and presumably your living are in some sense tied to scrolling and social platforms and stuff like that. How do you avoid the temptation to rage bait? Because
So yeah,
as
yeah, yeah.
I've done it. Many folks do it, but kind of here, let me scrolling your page. Not a lot of typical
Yeah, yeah.
YouTube stuff. You get a little spicy here and there, but
But it's like
yeah,
occasionally, right? Because occasionally you give in, man. But
yeah,
um, like I did every time I've talked about Kindle stuff or digital ownership or
yeah,
something like that, that usually gets way more clicks a lot faster. I'd never had a video get 1 million views in like 3 days until I did a video about how like Amazon wasn't going to let you download your books. And
yeah.
I even said in my Discord, I was like, I see why people clickbait now. Like
Uh-huh.
I like because that video took me 30 minutes to make. And,
Yeah.
and now I see what it would be like to be a guy who makes like 7 rage bait videos a day. But you have to
Yeah.
resist because it's bad for your soul. Like it's also quite degrading. If I can comment on one thing I saw in chat though, someone
Yeah.
asked me what I thought about techno feudalism by Yanis Varoufakis.
Mhm.
Um, and my next video, which will be out before the end of the month, is about digital ownership. It's like 30 minutes long, and I talk about techno feudalism in that video.
Oh,
So
amazing.
my view is that Varoufakis is not correct. We are still living under capitalism. Like we
Mhm.
still live in a mode of production that is capitalistic. We have
Mhm.
not moved to a new mode of production like feudalism. However, the basic insight that subscriptions and access to the cloud are akin to extracting rents in a feudalistic system is at least partly correct. That's what I mentioned in the book or in the video here. Yeah, because I'm worried about this kind of system where we become perpetual customers to access
Yeah.
things here. I think Varoufakis is kind of he is on to something. I just don't I at some point it's like I disagree with like roughly the framework that that we were using to interpret the world. We are worried about some of the same problems though.
Yeah, I mean, I think with techno-feudalism stuff, I like it as an analytic framework, but I agree with you in that I don't think it's like, okay, capitalism's done now. Time to move on from that. I think it's like a a framework we can use to understand things that are happening, but doesn't necessarily lead to having to uh, think about things in some totally new paradigm or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think I mean, look, I'm also not as bought into the general, like kind of like I said, I'm not a Marxist. So
Yeah.
for Varoufakis, he's coming from just this background. I just don't think even on his own sort of Marxist grounds, he's sort of justified that we've moved into a different mode of production.
Mhm.
Um, and that's sort of the challenge to ask what would
Yeah.
come next here, because the provocative part of his thesis is like capitalism is over, but we replaced it with something worse,
Mhm.
and it wasn't it wasn't the revolution or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I will talk. You will see me talk about Varoufakis. Not much in a 30-minute video. I talk about him for like 5 minutes or something
We'll
because
take
I
it.
I talk longer about Magic cards in that video than I like Magic the Gathering and like than I do about Varoufakis. But
Well,
uh,
I think for a lot of people that's probably just as interesting.
yeah,
Well, Jared, you've been hanging for an hour. I don't want to take advantage of your time much longer. So, besides, obviously, people, you should subscribe to Jared's channel. There's a link in the description. Oh, I've not. I'll put a link to your Substack in there as well once I'm done doing this. And then people need to save $30 a month to get ready to buy 12 copies of your book.
yeah.
What are any other calls to action you want to leave folks with?
No, I think that's about it. You should if you're not going to watch my stuff though, just watch a lot of Michael's videos. I noticed that already in my audience analytics, it shows audiences that overlap
Mhm.
and you are now like the fourth channel.
That's listen, you're an audience I want to overlap with. It's one of those things for folks that don't know, when you make YouTube stuff, you see who people from your channel watch, and it's been exciting to see some people I like pop up in there. Um, that makes me really happy to hear that.
Yeah.
And then I'll bug you
I
about this, Jared. Oh, go ahead.
I often use that as like an aspiration. Like
Yeah.
in 2 months, I would like to have the following 3 channels here rather than
Oh
these
yeah.
channels, because I see some stuff that like overlaps. One of the things that I've often struggled with is that what I try to do is take a topic that looks like a productivity topic and
Mhm.
actually show you that there's like a philosophical thing going on.
Yeah.
That just also means there's a lot of people who watch my stuff who just watch productivity videos. So like, and I've been
You're
consciously
ruining
trying to,
people's lives. They're trying to like do better at work, and now they're just like reading friggin' I don't know,
yeah,
medieval monastic Dominican self-help stuff.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. I'm trying to move away from that a little bit more. So to see people watching your stuff too is good, but keep watching Michael's stuff. Being a solo
what was I
creator
gonna
is
say?
tough, man. And so,
Yeah.
but you're doing it. So I want to see you keep doing it.
Well, sometime I'll bug you about this later. Sometime when we're not streaming, if you have half an hour, we'd love to chat with you a bit.
Yeah,
Happy to send you coffee money, or a 6-pack or something like that. But seriously, thanks, Ryan. Let's do this again soon. Always such a pleasure to talk to you. Love the stuff that you're making. I know people who are here hanging out do as well. And then best to you and your family, man. Very
thanks a
excited
lot, man.
about Trial 2.0 on the way.
Well, thanks a lot, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Great. Later, Jared. Friends, that was Jared Henderson. You know him, you love him. Uh, I'm going to hang out for a few. I will say, if anyone has questions about stuff, I can answer them. I feel a slight bit of pressure to talk about things, feel a slight bit of pressure to talk about stuff. So I'll say a few things and we can talk more. But yeah, please do sub to Jared. I really one of my favorite people. And I'll tell you something I like about Jared is like, as he was saying, right? Like he's not a Marxist or whatever. Yeah, that's why I like him. I don't want to just talk to people who think the same stuff that I do. I think sometimes there can be a little bit of an echo chambery vibe. But that's another story for another day. It's been a week for me, guys. I'm officially a week now after being laid off. It's my second time getting laid off before. Shout out if you've ever been laid off. It was, a kind of sudden thing. And I will say that at my previous employer, the team there made a final video before we were alleviated of our employment duties, and it did not go over well. It did not go over well. I'm going to say more about this sometime. My issue right now is I just think like I don't want anyone else to have negative effects from anything I say, but it's not been great. And, do whatever you can if you follow the other former WC team anywhere, but it's been tough. And I think the toughest thing for me, and any of my hesitations right now, are thinking about like, am I saying something that has legal ramification? Because things have happened, which I'll tell you guys about some other time. But I realize in reflecting on my former employer and where I'm at now is the thing that matters the most to me is community, right? Is you all, is getting to connect with people that I think are interesting, kind, curious people, even if we don't agree about the same stuff. That really matters to me. I really do love that. I didn't really know when it all ended if I wanted to keep doing this. And I guess that's the thing that I find motivating. It's sad that the community aspect is the thing that corporate interest don't care about and will never care about. You can't, it's not monetizable in the way that some would want it to be. That building relationships with an audience isn't valuable to certain folks. That taking time to get to know your audience and think about them as people isn't valuable. And you work for a thing that's owned by a company and you can forget about that. And then all of a sudden the corporate interest comes slamming down and you're like, oh yeah, this has been here all along and it feels really bad. So it's like scary now that I'm trying to do my own thing. And if that's not been made clear to any of you all, I am going to try to do this. I'm going to try to have this be what I do. I got a bunch of people signed up for the Patreon, and that's clutch. And a bunch of people did the thing where they paid for a year at once, which was like really kind to do. Because I will say this, I was not granted, that TV show Severance. I was not granted that TV show Severance at the conclusion of my employment due to folks feeling like I acted inappropriately. So, I got some sponsors that are going to be on some videos coming up. I hope that's not too annoying. If you guys haven't watched my most recent video, check that out if you want. It is on. I'll pull the link. I think I had the link posted in the chat for a second, but I did a video on Brian Johnson and living forever and why it's dumb. It's the first video that I paid an editor to do. I had the money to do that because some of y'all, supported me, which is great. But yeah, so I have some videos coming out. I'll tell you some stuff I'm working on. And if you're on Patreon or if you're just here, I would love to hear things you might want to hear me talk about. Cause I think now I have to figure out what, I might just, post some stuff here and maybe this will help make some sense of things. I'm working on Yes, Please. So that's for sure. I had Aura on my most recent video. So I was excited just to have someone, and obviously the amount of money that you get from sponsors when you're at the level that I am at now is pretty small, but doing some videos for Ground News, which I like Ground News. I think they're a cool company. And I don't really have a problem with them. But yeah, I think for me, I don't want to just start making the same type of stuff I was making before. I want to figure out ways to be creative. So definitely interested in feedback when you guys see videos, especially you all that I know and stuff like that. And I have a video I'm working on. So I'm going to film a thing this weekend on Jordan Peterson's Bible book. That'll be more of like a reaction to this book that Jordan Peterson wrote on the Bible. That is insane. And I'm going to give you some takeaways from that. I have a video that'll come out in a few weeks on capitalism and depression, or like sort of capitalism and mental health and the relationship between our brains and society. It's something I'm really interested in. So hopefully that'll be fun. And I have some other stuff I'm thinking about. I have a lot of ideas and I just got to figure out what I'm excited to make, what you all want to see, what feels reflective of stuff that I'm into. Pizza Boy asked a stream schedule yet. I'm curious what works for folks because I want it to be sort of conducive to people. I was thinking of doing streams at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays and Fridays potentially. But then I finally paid for TubeBuddy, and TubeBuddy told me that the optimal times for me to stream are like noon to 2 p.m. Pacific time. So if folks have times that work, I think my aim is to do at least 2 streams a week for now, probably Wednesdays and Fridays. I will say that I have some cool people that are going to come on. Jackson from Skip Intro is going to come on soon. CJ, the X, texting with them. I think they're going to come on soon. Mithril brought up Cool Zone Media. Yeah, I went on a Cool Zone show this week, and that was really fun. So I think maybe I can reach out to some people from there. And I need to figure out what day I'm going to put out videos because I don't want to stream those days. My eventual plan, if streams go well, was noon to 2 from the rocking chair. Okay. Was thinking of streaming like 2 to 3 times a week and then putting out 1 video a week. There is a world where I do 1 stream a week. That is a Patreon stream. I would do it for the cheapest level to get in there. I don't want to be whatever, but I got to figure out ways to make it valuable for people to sign up on Patreon, because that's going to be, the other like real honest thing I'll say is like YouTube money is so weird. Like the money you make on ads from videos varies so much, and even like sponsored stuff. So I think that's why so many people definitely depend on Patreon, because it at least provides like a consistent baseline. Slumlord, I have reached out to FD Signifier, so we'll do that soon. Henry's trying to get me killed. Do subscribe to Techno Poverty. I definitely want to get Henry on the show soon. I'm gonna reach out to Henry soon about some stuff. But yeah, so I'm just trying to figure it all out right now, trying to balance like taking some time to stop and breathe and think with the anxiety to make stuff, because I got family, got to make some money, got to try to figure out what to do with my life. But I'm gonna give this all a go, and I'm excited about it. But I do want you all to know um, that one of the motivators for me to keep doing this, or at least try to do it, is like the people and the community. Um, it's I don't know. It's really been um, meaningful for me. And I think the reason I've been so sad the last week is just like, I'll get Alec on soon. I think that's made me so sad is just how some things that I did to try to look out for the community are things that got me in a little bit of trouble, maybe some threats of legal action. Who knows? Um, so I think once it feels like things have blown over, I do want to talk about it. I'll do a stream or a video just about the WC situation, because it is a bummer. But sometimes it's like you have like a breakup or whatever, and you need to let some time pass, both for your emotions and again so that you don't get sued. So I'm going to try to play it cool for a little bit, and then I'll let you guys know. And yeah, for stream stuff as well, can't believe people are still watching. I appreciate that. What I'm kind of thinking now is I want to do the community college thing, conversations like what we just had, like with Jared, but there's some other folks I'm trying to get on, not just like academics, but just people who are writers and interesting, where we can kind of learn about a topic together. I know it's not the sexiest thing, but I think some of you like that. I want to do a version of like the What Are They Doing stream, which is more of the reacting to what's going on in news and culture. And then I was thinking of maybe if I did a third stream, it could be more of the maybe like pop culture and media stuff. I don't know. Or maybe they should all just be kind of reaction hangout stuff. I want to do what you guys kind of want to do. So, thank you, Calvin. I really appreciate that. So we'll see, but just know that I am inviting all of you to give me feedback, because, obviously, like, we can use the word community, and sometimes community gets used in this really shitty way where it's like a way to hide a money-making enterprise. My goal right now is to try to figure out how to make around the amount of money that I was making, which would be enough to continue to like contribute to stuff with my family, save a little bit for retirement, pay off student loans when those come back, and do this. And I do think the thing I'm excited about is I feel this weight off my shoulders. Like Sunday night, I went to bed, and obviously it's so anxiety inducing to get laid off, and there's all this uncertainty, but knowing that I was going to wake up on Monday and that I didn't have to work for that corporate entity anymore, I slept so well. I felt like there was like a weight off my chest. And even this week, I've, been just spending time reading stuff and writing down ideas for videos. And it makes me really excited to do things not connected to a corporate entity. It makes me excited that if I ask people to sign up for a Patreon or whatever, that they know 100% I'm the only person involved. Like I will receive that money, and then I will use that money to help pay for production costs and guests and stuff like that. It's scary, but it just feels nice knowing that there's not like an entanglement, and knowing that, moving forward, if I'm going to do ads, I have a final say if I do an ad with that company, not going to do something that feels sketchy. And honestly, the channels I'm most jealous of are the ones that don't have to do ads because they just, you know. So my thing is like there's an amount of money I'd like to be making a year, just that's like the normal amount I need to survive. If I need ads to do that, cool. If eventually I don't, then that's awesome as well. But you know, there you go. And I think my thing as well is just continuing to not just do like philosophy stuff, but just to think, to use philosophy as a tool, to use critical thinking as a tool to help us navigate stuff, and help us think about the world, to help us think about connecting with each other. I don't know. Also, I'm gonna really TMI, yeah, right now, transitioning off an antidepressant. This is day 2, so feeling a little sluggish. So if you noticed any of that today, that's all that is. I really picked a good time to do it. Yeah, Eddie, more BetterHelp. Every video brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you have severe mental illness? Well, then let's do a call with a therapist who's in like a Ukrainian basement with a gun to their head, in which everything you say gets stolen as data. Let's do that. So, you know, um, let's see, what is Lopez says? Maybe you'll look back in a year or two after having 1 million subscribers, get a laugh. Hey, I mean, the crazy thing is it's almost to 100,000 now. So that would be cool. Eddie, I'm probably not going to run for office. There's just too much stuff I've said online. Too much stuff that I've said online. I would get in so much trouble. Although Kat said some crazy stuff and she's there. And then Kat has confirmed, someone said maybe, yeah, so coffee sponsor. I'm working on that. It looks like we're going to keep yes, please. So it looks like that is going to happen. So we should be good there. Book stuff. Working on a book sponsor. Slumlord said maybe one pop culture media vid. Yeah, and also too, I'm just gonna like make a bunch of stuff and see what sticks. There's a little pressure sometimes with the sponsored ones. Like I am stressed this week because the video that came out this week has a sponsor on it, and I'm supposed to hit a certain number in the next 30 days. So I'll just this. If you have not watched my most recent video, please do. I needed to hit a certain amount of numbers so that they will pay me, which would be a nice thing to have happen. I'll say this, I have not checked in a while. Henry and myself still have access to one of the email addresses we used to have. I have an email address that's on my YouTube page. If you ever need to get in touch about anything or have thoughts or ideas about stuff, I'm on all the social media still. I try to stick to Blue Sky when possible these days. I still, of course, go on the other one too. But yeah, I'm kind of just rambling now. I really appreciate you guys being here. Thanks again to Jared. Rewatches do count, actually. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. So next week, let's think. I'm definitely going to stream twice next week. I would say it'll be 2 days out of Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. Oh, here's a reminder. Someone said they don't have social media. Yes, I plan on working with Henry in the future for sure. I was messaging Henry the other day about doing some editing and stuff like that. And obviously I want to get Henry on stream and all that sort of stuff. But if you guys want to subscribe to the Patreon, but just free, this isn't a scam, I promise. All of the streams and videos, when they come out, I will send a post on the Patreon that goes to everyone. So not just the pay, because there is a free option. So I'd say if you don't use social media, you want to know when streams are happening, the 2 things you can do is like set an alert on my channel, which YouTube is weird about that sometimes, or subscribe to the free Patreon and you'll get an email update whenever I'm going to go live on anything. And thank you so much for being nice, you guys. Lennon McDonald, so good to see you. What is this? This is from Carrick says, what are your question prompts to shift yourself from passive watching to philosophical reflection in the moment? I mean, the thing of like why and where, and by that I mean teleologically, like where is this thing going? What is the aim of this thing? What does this thing want me to do? I think that is an important thing to ask. And then just like why? You know, because sometimes we passively consume stuff and we don't ask why. And maybe sometimes we get caught up in stuff where it's just like data extraction or it's keeping us distracted from other stuff. You know, I think these things are worth thinking about. So and you know, there's the famous line like philosophy begins in wonder. Well, what is wonder other than abstracting from what we take for granted and like stepping back? Sometimes I think this is a little trippy, heady, whatever. You know, what is it like if you came to the planet as an alien or something like that? What would it look like to analyze culture from that perspective? You know, what does it look like to make things a little bit weird again? And yes, the channel did get too woke. Um, let's see. Oh, rocking chair. I didn't even know it did that, to be honest. So I think I'll take it off. That seems gaudy. I didn't realize that was up there. I'm bad at computer, guys. But yeah, I don't want to. I don't know. That seems a little. No, that feels weird. I'll figure out how to take that down or something. Um, but yeah, I hope everyone has a really good weekend, you know? And I just want to say again, um, thank you so very much to Jared Henderson for coming on. There is a link in the description to check out his page. I just think Jared's a really smart, interesting guy. You should all be following if you're not already. Please leave comments. Like, let me know what you want me to cover. Let me know thoughts on any of this. I really care. And I love seeing messages from you guys. And this is what I'm doing now. So I have time. I have time to look at comments and stuff like that. Let me know if you have any ideas for future streams. And then I will be streaming Monday or Wednesday. We'll see. We'll stream one of them. I'm going to try some different times out. Maybe I'll set a poll. Give me a couple weeks to find my legs, I would say, you know, but by mid-May, I will have a consistent streaming schedule down. I'll have a consistent video upload schedule down. I just got to kind of find my legs a little bit, you know? So there you go. Someone brought up a new lore doc. I guess we could do that. I'm going to bring up a really spicy thing. I'm going to ask Jared Bauer to come on stream sometime. I'm not kidding. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Lennon, thank you so much. And you know, everyone from like the old band, I'm going to get back involved here. It's just stuff is, some people are taking some time. There's still some things up in the air, all that sort of stuff. I still kind of want to do, thank you, David, like a wake for that other thing in person in LA. So if anyone's in LA, there you go. As a former Catholic, I'm curious about your opinions of Pope Francis. I think it sucks that he is dead. I think that there's a lot of things you could say that are critical about Pope Francis, but I think he's been like the best Pope of my lifetime. And I think they're going to put a total monster in his place. So that sucks. Okay, like the stream if you haven't on the way out. Leave a comment if you watch this later. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Be on the lookout for videos, all that sort of shit. Click stuff, do all the sort of things. I hope you have a really great weekend because you all deserve it. If someone wants to make a new lore doc, make the new lore doc and share it here on Patreon, whatever. I can pin it. We'll go from there. Have a good weekend because you deserve to have a good weekend. I'll